just as a base to what we're talking about, because it really forms part of what is going on for us. How do we then understand empathy? What is understanding empathy? How do we apply empathy? How do we respond to empathy? And how do we build back better? So those really are the steps that we'll go through this presentation. I will welcome your questions and thoughts at the end of this, but I do hope that we can have a conversation that will ultimately help us understand that empathy is not just something good to talk about. Empathy is something we need to be actively engaging in. Why? Because right now, we are leading people that have been hurt, people that have been challenged, people whose lives have been turned around just in the last 1 year. You are in your places of leadership, have people that have lost someone this year, people that have had to work through the challenge of reorganizing their homes and their living spaces so that they can accommodate work that is remote, so that they can accommodate having their children at home for an extended period of time. These are things that we have never had. I think in the history of this country, I was sharing in a few trainings, and in the history of this country, there has never been a situation where school has been put off. I put it, I'm not that old, but when I asked around, even during the time when Kenya was going through an emergency period, just pre-independence, people were still going to school, even during the emergency period. My parents happened to be they were school goers at that time, and school did not stop for them. And so we find ourselves in waters that we have never charted before, not just as a nation, but our neighbors as well. And as humanity, it is something that has affected us in so many ways. And so if we look at it and just think of it as it's a COVID-19 pandemic, it's something that everybody is going through, but then fail to contextualize the challenges that have come to us in the different ways, then it means that we may look at empathy as something that we talk about, but not really engage in, so to speak. So this is our presentation flow, and we can get, and really leadership communication is something that we have encountered in different areas. So we started talking about leadership communication at the point when practitioners in management and who are leading companies started to begin to see the importance of having leaders communicating the vision of the organization. But I think it had started a little bit earlier, because when you look at our social setup, we place it like in our families. Leadership communication has always been a pillar for families. Why? Because when we have heads of families, fathers traditionally, we have mothers now leading households, but where we have heads of households, we always have the head of the household being the one that is communicating the vision for the household. So they give a guideline, they set goals, they select which direction we're going to take. And so gradually, I think we began to learn this, and then began to sort of integrate it into the workplace, where we now have leadership communication. And I put it simply as this: leadership communication is conveying vision with a conviction that drives the people that you're leading into action. You really are inspirational enough as a leader for people to actually want to do what you're asking them to do, and for people to want to listen to where you want to take them, and then they actually go with you. So in any business role, actually, any business role, whether you're at top leadership, mid-tier leadership, even management at entry level, you need to convey your ideas and vision in a way that drives effective decision making for yourself, for the team, and also drives people into action. If you are in entry management, for example, if you do not have the capacity to engage or share your ideas in a way that is strong and powerful, nobody is going to listen to you and give you the chance that you need to actually get better. Mid-tier management is about getting people to come with you. Top management is about getting organizations to sort of move into the vision that you have for that organization. So at any level, even at a personal level, leadership communication becomes important. They say the greatest leaders motivate and inspire their teams through clear communication. You promote discipline that way, you promote accountability, and you promote strategic alignment. And these are not my words. These were shared by a lady called Sophie Thompson when she talks about that when you have clear communication, you're promoting discipline amongst your team. And we know that that's required for when you're driving vision. You're also promoting accountability. People are able to tell you, we're doing this, we're not able to do this. So people are accountable to you, and that opens up the channels for what needs to move. And also, there is a strategic alignment that people need when they need to move on. Leadership communication also speaks to the ability to articulate key messages, the ones that your followers and your leaders are driven to follow or align to, so that they're driven to action and inspiration. And these things sound very like, off the chart. Like when we're talking about them, they really look good. But let me give you, think of an example of leadership communication. This meeting, just being able to get the conveners of this meeting to communicate this so powerfully, like they've over the last few days, shared it across social media platforms. They've shared different information. They've shared the program. They've shared my profile. They've shared a little bit about empathy and how it relates to leadership communication across social media platforms. Why? To be able to get people interested in being able to come and look at what is going on here. Leadership communication applies even when we are having one-on-one conversations, when we are leading in our homes, when we are leading people who are younger than us, when we are leading large organizations, as is consistent of the membership of KIM, for instance. We need to understand that we have to have an ability to articulate what are important messages to us, and we articulate them powerfully so that they get to other people. Then how then also does it look like? It looks like confidence. When you are confident in delivering your content, when you're confident in delivering your convictions about the different ideas that you need, then people can't help but really look at you and follow you in the same. And I think this is where now things shift very quickly, because as a leadership communicator, then there is like, I think 4 things that we're looking at. Are they? Yes, there must have been 4 pillars that we're looking at. And in leadership communication, when you are being powerful, or when you are practicing leadership communication right, one, you're listening. You're listening to your audience, which means that you understand your stakeholders, you understand the people that you're leading, and so you're listening to them actively. You're listening to understand them. And then secondly, you have an ability, a key ability, to decode body language. And this one is an important one, because we say in communication that 93% of our communication is what is not said, is non-verbal communication, is our tone, the tone of our voice. So that's critical. But a majority of that is also in our body language. What you're doing with your eyes, what you're doing with your hands, what you're doing with yourself. Actually, they say that if you want to understand communication as a leader, listen for what is not being said. What is not being said becomes the most important thing in that conversation. What people are not telling you becomes what you really need to be able to be strategic. And this is across the board. It happens for personal communication. It also happens when we're talking about corporate communication. So there is that. You're listening. One pillar the first pillar is listening. The second pillar is understanding your body language. And the third one is concise verbal communication. And I think this is the one that has been really raised high above. Actually, I understand that last month, in the last conversation, the person that was speaking was actually speaking about public speaking. And we have very high stakes in public speaking. And rightly so, because many times the first impressions that we give people are normally the impressions that last with them. But one of the things that I have come to learn in my practice over the last 8 years, teaching people how to speak with clarity and confidence, the thing that I have understood is just what Mr. Ndegwa said in his remarks. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They're not really interested in how much you know, but they're interested in knowing how much you care. And so the essence of public speaking is not just being very well spoken. It's not just having great presence on the stage. It really is being able to understand the people that you're speaking to and expressing that care powerfully. So there's concise verbal communication, but there's also in leadership communication, written communication. How do you write to people? How do you express yourself in written form? Do people feel respected by the kind of content that you share with them? So those four, when delivered with confidence, when they form your content and there is conviction, people are able to say that you are in leadership communication. But then now it moves us to what, in my view, I have come to understand as a pillar of this leadership communication. How do you listen? How do you take time to decode body language? How do you take time to speak with clarity so that people are understanding what you're saying? And how do you take time to actually write out things that people understand? If you're, for instance, in a technical position, you're able to help people, you're able to write in non-technical terms so that people understand easily. And of all the things that we talk about, when we talk about intelligence communication, when we talk about emotional intelligence, we are looking at one thing. And this one thing is empathy. The understanding and sharing of the feelings of another. This is how Oxford define it: understanding and sharing the feelings of another person. Now, like I said, as I was beginning this, it sounds so easy. In fact, empathy looks like a very simple word, very simple expression, very simple definition. But I want us to delve just a little bit. We'll be able to look at a few areas where empathy becomes a little more active in our daily living. And I think there were many people, especially people who were leading, psychologists, communicators, people who were leaders in their organization, and they were leaning more towards the psychology of understanding how people work, probably pick this up a long time. But I think the big conversation on empathy was brought onto the fore by leaders such as Dr. Brené Brown, who I think began to talk about the importance of vulnerability in the workplace, began to talk about the importance of empathy. In fact, did a clear distinction between empathy and sympathy and how we can apply it into the workplace. And so gradually over the years, we've seen a lot of this being practiced or being put onto mainstream leadership where it wasn't there. As I was watching the documentary when we were starting up, one of the former CEOs shared something, and he said one of the things for Kenya Institute of Management was just the understanding that people were finding their way into management. Nobody taught you how to be a manager. You had studied your BCom, you had studied your communication, and then you get into a workplace and you just gradually find that you're growing into management. So it at that point it happens to be it turns out to be happenstance that you find yourself in management and you don't have the skills to manage people. And so that grew into being able to be understanding of people. But then we find ourselves in a world that is so dynamic, a world that has changed, a world where things such as the dreams of our children are becoming more important than the work that we do. And so what do leaders do when people actually bring home to work, when they bring themselves to work, when it's no longer viable for us to leave our feelings at the door and come into work, we begin to gain and build skills that help us navigate that place. And so as I start this and as I share this, I want to say this. 2021 and going forward, for anyone across leadership, it may look like this is for top leadership, but as long as you're leading, and this is leading yourself, leading others, leading in families, leading across the community, leading even in the courts where we live. You know, you might be a leader in the courts where we live in our neighborhoods. Leadership will completely be off if we do not begin to understand the feelings of people. We've gone through such a place where people are so crushed. And if their workplaces do not respond to the dissonance of feelings and the disruption that people are feeling, you will lose your people at that point. So let's see, how then do we begin to do this? Because I think the notion that we have is that empathy is so up in the cloud, looking very good and looking very easy to do. But the truth is, empathy is actually messy. It speaks to you're bringing something of sharing feelings and I think mushiness, and remember, you're getting this into a place where we have said, don't bring your feelings, don't catch feelings, you know, it's nothing personal, remove feelings out of this. We're bringing empathy and we're bringing feelings into a workplace that has traditionally put feelings out of it. We haven't been having feelings into our workplaces. In fact, when somebody is emotional, we say, oh, that person catches feelings very easily. You know, they catch feelings, they are sensitive, they are too, you know, they're too how do you say, they're too not quite easy to deal with, because they wear their feelings on their shoulders. And yet this is what our new world, building back better, like I said, is causing us to do. Again, this did not just come from the workplace. We have been socialized to hide our feelings and to process them personally. I do an exercise when I'm training, and I tell people that one of the things, how do we build self-awareness? And one of the things that we need to understand about self-awareness is that we need to come from a place of understanding where we have come from as a people. So we were brought up, if you grew up in this country and went to school in this country in the formative years, you grew up in a country where you were told what to do, what to wear. You went to school, you were not encouraged to ask questions, not at home. If you were told this is what you were eating, you did not ask questions. If you were told this was the school that you were going, you did not ask questions. So we grew up really not being able to share our feelings. Someone put it to me very simply yesterday, that even at the point where you even went to the shop, say maybe to the supermarket, you did not have a choice of what you need to get. You know, at a supermarket, was picked up. You didn't have a choice to say that I want this spread, I want this sort of thing. And it was that. Even if you were sent to the kiosk at the shop, you're told, go and get milk. You are not told to go and choose the milk that was there. You just were told, go and pick milk and quickly, you know, come back. So we were socialized to hide away from our feelings. And I put it to you that so many of us do not know how to process feelings. When we see them, they are a very unnecessary inconvenience. And so what you'd rather do is actually shut them down. And then you're the kind of leader who's being told, okay, but now leadership communication demands for you to be able to understand people, to be able to read their body language, to be able to listen to them, to be able to speak to them in a way that leaves them whole and edified, and to be able to write to them in a way that leaves them whole as well. And you are here, you have never been taught how to express feelings, that feelings are only expressed in the personal space. But we are in a workplace where these feelings have to be expressed. So we are socialized to process them personally. We're socialized to process grief personally. We are socialized to process even happy feelings very personally. But I found out recently that, again, unexpressed feelings, the feelings that we do not express, they don't die. They are like energy. They will actually show up as something else, and that thing is usually negative. And that's why, more than anything else, as much as it sounds very neat and tidy to talk about empathy in our leadership communication, it also means that we must get to the place of messiness, to actually process the fact that we have never been able to understand how to process feelings. So I say this, make no mistake, empathy is not an easy, warm, fuzzy thing. You know, this is the real call of leadership. Being able to step into the shoes of others that you are leading, that is the high call of leadership. And that's why I say it is the foundation of leadership communication. Going forward, leadership without self-awareness, which we need to help people along, will actually fail. It will actually fail. And so let us look at the attributes of leadership, of empathy, that is the foundation of leadership communication. And I found three appropriate ones, but I mean, four appropriate ones, but three that are really, really powerful. The first of which is taking a perspective, or perspective taking. What does that look like? We'll examine that in a little bit. The second is being non-judgmental, standing in a place of suspended judgment for the people that you're leading. Yet again, not something that we do very graciously. In fact, we're taught that when people are slacking or not putting in their best at work, we are supposed to actually up the punishment, so to speak. There's a meme that we find very funny in this office, and we say that we should put it up as a running joke. It's a running joke in our office, and it says that the beatings will continue until production improves. You know, and you say that's really the mantra of toxic bosses, and really it's true. When people are not producing their best, what we do is that we actually unleash the stick, and that stick is the stick of judgment. We beat them with our judgment, we look at them with our judgment until we feel that we have judged them enough, until we scare them into the corner of productivity. But again, the call of being a leader who exercises empathy is to suspend judgment, because you need to get into a place of understanding. And the third thing is to be able to recognize emotions. And I hope you can begin to see why this is messy, because if we can't recognize emotions for ourselves, how are we going to recognize it in other people? And fourthly, and we'll talk about this separately, is also communication. So what is perspective? A perspective is the ability to view a person's angle as their truth. But do we as leaders do that? As leaders, what we need to understand is that we do not work in isolation from other people. Even though we are the vision casters, even though we are the ones who are driving the goal, even though we are the ones who are driving the organization mandate, we need to understand very early on that we do not lead from a place of isolation. The people that we are leading are pure flesh and blood human beings. They are not without context. They have had their experiences that they had growing up. They have had their experiences that they have had in different organizations before they came to yours. They have had their experiences in families. They have formed opinions about life, about the thing that you're also trying to get them to form an opinion in. And so understanding that we are not an entity unto ourselves, and that we are leading people that also have a context, helps us begin to understand what perspective is. We need to respect these different points of view. And these points of view from the people that we are leading, we need to understand why are they having these points of view. And again, even when we don't understand why they're having them, to understand that these points of view are there. Why? Because we need to get that in this 2021 and beyond, leadership will need to steer clear of egocentric thinking. We need to embrace information. We need to embrace the data that we're getting from the feedback that people are giving us to make useful decisions. And we cannot do that if we are thinking that we are a god or an idol unto ourselves, that we are the it of it. We need to get into the place of humility to understand that we're not working in isolation, and the people that we are leading also have intelligence, also have opinions, also have thoughts about what we need to do. If, for example, let's say let's just use the example of a product launch, for instance. So maybe your vision is determined to launch a product at a certain time, say in this, turbulent time, or even what we're doing, like right now with Christmas things and everything. But then your communications team or even your marketing team advises against it. They come at you and they tell you, this is what our research is showing us. We're seeing people like what we're seeing on if it's a fast-moving consumer good, so they'll tell you what we are seeing on the aisles at the retail centers are telling us we probably need to wait this out. We need to wait this out because people may be struggling with, as much as it's a holiday season and it's traditionally a spending season, what we are seeing is that people are clutching to their purses because there's school that's coming immediately after the beginning of the holiday season, and we have not had school for several months. If your team advises you that and you still insist on going with their without listening to their opinions, then that is egocentric. You're really isolating the team, yet they hold valuable information that you need to actually do a good job. That is what it is. When you think and sit down and say, okay, so if this is what is happening and this is what we're having, then what can we do to mitigate so that we are able to keep our customers and we're still able to get our products running? That is what perspective taking is. You listen from your team's point of view. You understand it. Perhaps you reflect on it and you adjust your plans to suit what is going on or what the feedback is actually showing. Ultimately, you're not selling out to your vision fulfillment. You really are just including more people who actually are key stakeholders in your vision into this element. That's perspective taking. When we allow our minds as leaders to begin to hear, listen to the opinions of other people, but also look at those opinions and see how we can adjust what was initially our game plan so that they can feel included and so that they can feel that their lives and their contribution into the organization or into our brands matter. And then secondly, we come into the non-judgmental aspect of things. Passing judgment clouds clarity every single time. Personal conversation, work conversation, group dynamics, when you are passing judgment, you always cloud clarity. And here is the thing about judgment, it's always there. We say in communication, we don't speak from a place of, we don't come to any communication platform with a clear slate. Every single one of us has a background or a backdrop or some communication or some in our subconscious, there's something that is going on that is an opinion about the thing that's currently happening. So for instance, in this subject of empathy, it could be that your listening is based or is being fueled by one, what you have heard about me. Secondly, it could be fueled by what you have read about empathy. Thirdly, it could be fueled by your experience with a leader who practices empathy in their leadership communication. But what we need to understand, and this will help us a lot, is that it is easy for judgment to be such a barrier or such to cloud our minds that we don't think of ourselves as judgmental. But what we need to do is that when we get to the place of self-awareness, we begin to understand that we are actively listening to others. And I say this, listening to others, allowing them to express themselves without the fear of a clapback, without the fear of punishment, so that it frees our work environment to be, it frees people to think and breathe. When you can be in a place where you're not afraid to hear what people have to say, whether that is positive for you or negative for you, I want to put it to you that you are in a place where you are suspending judgment for others. You're gracious with people. And you see, these are words that have not traditionally featured in our workplaces or in our leadership places in or in our organization. Usually, the words grace have been reserved for more social setups. They've been reserved for more religious setups. So we can extend grace to our siblings, for example, but we haven't been taught how to extend grace into the workplace. And these are the terms going for 2021 and beyond. We need to begin to start exercising grace to people that do not share opinions as we do, to people that have a different viewpoint, especially for those of us that are getting the different levels of millennials getting into the workplace or getting into enterprise, because a lot of them then are starting up businesses, or a lot of our customers will then be a generation that is used to asking questions, a generation that is not used to taking yes and no, this is the way we've always done it. They're not taking tradition. This is how it's always been. This is how things are always done. And because that is the kind of customer, that is the kind of person that we are leading, we need to actively cultivate listening to others without allowing them to express themselves without fearing that they will offend our feelings, or they will offend our principles, or they will offend our values. We listen to them just as they are, and we listen to them without getting into the place where we're also putting them in fear that if you don't speak like this, then you're going to get some sort of clapback. As we do that, then what we're doing is we're also opening up a creative space for people to be able to work in our workplace, where they're able to create new products, where they're able to use data effectively to be able to get us to where we need to be as leaders. What really we are doing when we're suspending judgment for the people that we lead is that we are allowing them to do a better job. We are allowing them to do their work as they should. It frees the work environment. It is useful for catching potential lapses. I mean, in a workplace, especially in this day and age of high stress levels, and it takes away fear, which really is the height of judgment in our workplaces. When people can work without feeling that they are fearful, it takes away that from them. And then this other one, and I think this is the one that keeps coming to us, recognizing emotion. Do we recognize emotion? Do we create our workplaces? And this is what empathy is doing. Are we generating workplaces that form meaningful connections? Are we understanding how to decode silence? Are we understanding how to decode feelings? Let me tell you, use an example that we have now. I think the COVID example is really a critical one. So what has happened is that, a lot of this past year has been, even this, what we're doing right now. Traditionally, we would not be doing this. We would actually be seated in one place, and I would physically be present, as would you, and we would have this conversation without necessarily having masks, talking about social distancing and talking about, all of these things that we have been talking about, protocols that guide our management of COVID-19. But this is where we find ourselves. Now, if you don't recognize that this means something for the people that you lead, then you lose it. What does it mean for them? It means, I had said this earlier, we have taken workplaces, their home spaces that have traditionally not been used for work, and turned them into workspaces. We have also, in a very short time, had a living space turned into a workspace, and also a space where children have been. Before, we used to, there was this running joke that we leave our houses, and the people that help us in our houses, the people that manage our homes, are the ones that used to enjoy it. We pay monthly for television, and they're the ones that enjoy it because we are hardly in that home. There was also the running joke that many of us in this period have bought appliances. I actually have data to back this up, because I remember checking in a shop, and they told us the amount of appliances, the labor-saving devices and appliances that have been bought in this period has really shot up than we've traditionally seen. Why? Because we were not staying in our homes, but now we find that we have to work, we have to manage children, we have to still clean clothes, that place, we still have to have food prepared in that place. And so in one fell swoop, overnight, our living spaces have then become workspace and mixed use spaces. Now, if we don't recognize that this has an effect on our emotions, and if we don't recognize that it also has an effect on the emotions of the people that we are leading, and we fail them. If we fail, and again apply judgment onto the young lady who is your manager, but she's come late to a Zoom meeting, well, not recognizing that she may have 2 or 3 children that she has to manage. She has a toddler, she has young ones who traditionally would have been in school, so she would have been very well able to concentrate, but now can't because they're at home and she has to manage their play. If we don't recognize that these are the dynamics that we are working with and recognize that there is emotions associated with that, we will have lost on reaching people. Emotions and language cannot be out of the context, like the context that I've just shared, and the different contexts that we're having. Because the context of many of us have lost people during this COVID period. Many of us have lost opportunities during this COVID period. Many of us had made plans and goals, and we have watched them, sort of just go down the drain. If we don't understand that's the context of people that we are leading, it's going to be a really difficult time for us. And so leadership, the demand on leadership communication is to understand the temperaments of people, to understand the different personalities. You know, the way we only do temperament tests and personality tests when hiring people, I think now more than ever, some of the things that we should be doing as we're doing our remote meetings is to be able to tell people, by the way, this is, check your personalities. Let's do personality tests and let's have a conversation on this. So you begin to understand how different conversations respond to different things, how they conflict, how they work with creativity, how they even respond to feelings and logic at the same time, because those things become critical as you're leading people and as you're stepping into the shoes of people. So understand temperaments, personalities, understand the space, the actual space that people are working in. People that had small houses that work with them, and now this is the house that they have to incorporate a computer for their work, a computer for their spouse if they have a spouse that's also working in the same context, and a computer for their children. This space, what is that space that they are in at the moment? Right now, empathy will demand that leaders communicate from this place of understanding that this has been a difficult year, understanding that children have been out of school, understanding that dissonance has been part of our daily lives in this place, actually understanding that, there were so many people, even now, people that have had disturbed sleep patterns. And what that means is that people are not processing at their optimum. People are more tired than they would, and people are a bit edgy. Even their emotions are greater. And so probably even in leadership at this point in time, what it means is that we need to even get into the place of studying and understanding feelings. How is it that we share and plan for skills to do certain tasks at the workplace, but we never skill, or we don't upskill or retool to be able to manage the different levels and the different areas of our relationships? That is the goal for us as leaders, that you're understanding that people are at a place of dissonance right now, and you are making provisions for them to be able to do that, is being able to recognize emotions. Are we creating spaces for meaningful connections? Are we suspending judgment when people are silent, or when people are expressing their feelings in a way that we do not deem acceptable? Are we in a place of judging, or are we in a place of understanding? I put it to you that empathy puts it in a place where, if we are recognizing what they are doing, and if we're recognizing that there is a space where they are comfortable, then and only then we can be able to say that we are practicing empathy in our communication leadership. And this finally is just that: listening to understand and to connect. Listening to be able to be in the shoes of the person. You're listening, when you're listening to respond, then the person that's speaking to you is speaking to the wind. They're just speaking to the wind. But when you're listening to make a connection, when you're listening to get to the place where there is a connection, that's the place where we can begin to help people begin to come to, I think, a level of gentility, a level of bringing them to the place where they can understand what we are about. I think Brené Brown put it very, very well when she says, rarely can a response make something better. Many times, what makes something better is a connection. Are we as leaders connecting with our teams even when they are not exactly doing what we expect them to do? Can we still exhaust ourselves to find a connection? What does that connection look like? It looks like the three things that I've shared. It looks like suspending judgment in the face of what's going on. It looks like retooling, like asking people, listening, are we on the right path? What goals can we change? How do we rework what is going on? We've seen some of these things being put in place. One of the model telephone service providers at the beginning of it began to, they suspended the costs for transferring money from one, for certain amounts, for lower amounts. It was the understanding of the central bank in being able to, put in place measures that help people be able to manage their finances. It was in being able to have businesses, different businesses, sort of just give discounts into different areas. It was extending lines of credit. It was, for some people, I saw several landlords being able to understand, okay, this is the period that we're in, but what does it mean if we can be able to at least extend time for people to be able to pay their rent? Empathy. It's all around us, and it's not easy. Being able to rework and put some of the measures that we put in place as leadership doesn't put it as it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it as simple as we make empathy to look like. Empathy is sacrifice. Because it means that you have to suspend what you want done to be able to understand where people are at and how you can work with them at their pace to be able to get what they want, but also to be able to get what you want. And so I dealt a little further because I actually started to think then, all right, so if this is empathy and this is such a high call, are we qualified as leaders to be able to speak in that sense? Are we qualified? And so in this, as we come to sort of what I'm looking at as the tail end of our presentation, there's something I want us to sort of look at. Because I felt that it was heavy. That one of the things that we need to understand is that it's easy to say that we are, in leadership. It's easy to say that leadership looks, it looks this way and it looks that way, and we are leading with empathy, and we have, communication. Our communication is at par. We speak well, we write well, we are listening to our people, we can decode body language. But then, have we gotten to the realization that empathy is also exhausting? It's very exhausting because it means that you have to adjust yourself as a leader to be able to be empathetic to your different teams, and each person in this team brings a different dynamic. And so I started to think about it, and here is what I feel strongly that is sort of like a key message for us as we sort of bring this to a close. For leaders, the demand of empathy is a heavy investment. Management of relationships. Imagine we're asking you to manage 1,001 relationships, but we're also expecting you to do a good job in fulfilling the vision of the organization that you're running. It is a heavy investment. And this is the conclusion that I drew as I did this. We can only feel for others if we feel for ourselves. So there is no practicing empathy if you cannot be able to have empathy for yourself. If you cannot be able to be so self-aware that you remove yourself from a situation and you can be able to observe the different levels of that situation and say, all right, We may have made a mistake here, but you know what? There is a different way to go about it. We may have fallen short of our goals in this place, but you know what? There is something we can still do about it. The board or the people that are above me are demanding for answers in this area, and you know what? That is not a judgment on me. I can't be able to look at this environment, I can't be able to look at this situation, and I can't be able to look at the situation of my team, and with that, be able to craft a response that can buy us or get us more time to be able to fulfill the vision of leadership, to be able to take people where they are going. And so there is no being an empathetic a leader who's communicating the same if you haven't understood that you need to feel for yourself. So this is the ask. You need to actually understand feelings to be able to decode them and distinguish them. Empathy for others begins with an understanding of your own internal dialogue and a listening of that internal dialogue with a non-judgmental approach. And this is now where it becomes deeper, because as people in leadership, one of the things that has consistently been shared in our world and in the practice of leadership is that leadership is a lonely place. It's a place where you hardly get any understanding. The people that you're leading may not understand you very easily. And so here is what I say: if you don't then have a healthy internal dialogue, it will crush you. And if you don't understand how to respond and speak to yourself in a non-judgmental approach, then this crushes you. So it is communication 101 with yourself, so to speak. So that's the demand. The demand is heavy. This demand is very, very heavy because you're managing relationships, but you're also running an organization. And now we're adding a third thing to it and saying, feel for yourself. You need to feel, you need to be easy with yourself, and you need to be forgiving of yourself. Again, notice the terms that we're bringing into our workplace, traditionally terms that we have not had within the workplace: forgiveness, being gracious, empathy. All of these sound very soft until we begin the practice of them, and we actually realize that empathy is an active role, really the essence of leadership. Forgiveness is an essential skill that we need to have. Forgiveness for ourselves, for the things and the goals that we fail, for when we fail people, and forgiveness for others when they fail us, when they fail to meet or get us to the place where we want to in our vision. These are interesting times, because building back better means that we need to incorporate what has not been in the workplace, or become much more active and strategic in planning for reflective workshops, for example. Many times at the beginning of the year, so many of us will get into strategic workshops. We want to get into a strategic meeting. We want to strategize for what are we doing. We strategize for 5 years. We have 5-year plans. We have yearly plans. We have quarterly plans. But rarely do we get into the space of being strategic about our own feelings. Now, as leadership, if we want to keep going, these are the things that we need to incorporate. We need to have more reflection workshops. We need to have more what traditionally we've called soft skills. Now I call essential skills. Those are critical for us. Observe your experiences as a leader from a place of openness. Look at, for example, what has happened to you as a leader in this year, and there were things that you had hoped to achieve. You know, maybe with King, there were things. Maybe there were new programs to be introduced at the management university, but this did not happen because why? We're having people, sort of going online. But what did happen? We were able to integrate and incorporate an active remote learning program. We were able to still have our programs whilst having them remotely. We're reaching more people than we ever were. These are experiences that we can observe. We can look at it from a place of openness, and we can suspend judgment based on the context that we have looked at success as. I think even the definition, I say, of at this point will really need to be looked through. suspending judgments means that just for the time being, lay aside the views that you have, and even look at your values from a suspended point of view. And I'm not saying let go of values, because values are essential to who we are, but look at them from a place where you're not judging yourself, and enter into that inner space, that space that so many of us as leaders call the reflective space. Enter into that space without prejudice. Leadership communication is the place where we can really treat ourselves as human beings. You can be free to explore, different aspects of your internal dialogue without necessarily saying, no, I can't think that, no, I can't feel that, no, my position demands that I do that. So giving yourself space, and this is what I'm actually leading to. As we begin to extend forgiveness, what leadership communication going forward will look like. It will look like allowing yourself as the leader to have extended times of reflection. Sorry, you can't always be doing. You can't always be in the open space. You need the quiet space, because in that quiet space, you get to understand what it is to be a human being, and then you are the human being that now begins to lead other human beings. As you understand that you are fallible, you begin to understand that others are also fallible, but that they are fallible or that they are not able to get to the place that you want them to be when you want them to get to be does not mean that it cannot be done. It just means that we are exploring and finding a creative way of being able to reach our goals while still leaving people whole and edified. Ultimately, I think for many people who are veterans in leadership, and for many people who have come to the end of their professional lives and are retired and are resting, I think so many of them will tell us this, that one of the most important things that you will find towards the end of our lives and towards the end of our professional lives is that we treat people with respect. People become the highlight of why we lead. People become the highlight of why we manage. Yes, we have programs that we manage. Yes, we have visions that we cast. But ultimately, at the center of all those programs, at the center of all these highlights are people. And when we notice and recognize what is happening around us, we can then begin to understand how we can lead with a humane element, an element of stepping into the shoes of other people and being able to help them come through. A practice called empathic intervention says that attentive empathy, which is empathy towards yourself, is based upon attentive self-empathy that helps you to understand the thoughts, the feelings, the actions of others, so that you can interact with them effectively and effectively, sorry. And hence the outcome of that practice of being empathic and interacting yourself from a place of empathy is better served when you are skillfully being intentional about it. It won't just happen. This reflection workshops that I'm proposing for others, but mostly for ourselves as leaders, will not happen. We need to get to the place of intention. One of the things I realized as a communication consultant and working with people in humanity, and I said this earlier, is that my desire to help people speak with clarity and confidence then speaks to their being able to plan for their communication in a way that's intentional. Think about the things that you're going to say to people, not so that you can be charming with them and everything, but you can be intentional about it. You can be intentional even when they do not feel that they agree with what you're saying. They can actually understand that you are coming from a place where you are communicating with care. That's intention. When you're intentional about being clear and speaking with clarity, you are getting to the place where you can begin to step out, from the place where you're leading to having an internal place for yourself, also then stepping out back and being able to provide understanding to people. Empathy is not for empathy's sake. and we don't empathize just to manipulate. You know, you're not being empathetic so that you can say, let me be empathetic with these people or empathic with these people so that they can do what I want them to do. We're empathic because this is a powerful tool to build teams. We can edify our teams. We can solve complex communication problems when we are empathic with people. When we open spaces and our environments can be environments where people are not feeling judged, where they are not feeling fearful of sharing what their needs are, then we are exercising responsibility. So empathic leadership communication then becomes that. It becomes a place where we are human as the leaders, but we are also leading human beings, and we are at a place where we're not whipping them into or slave driving them into productivity. We're actually working with them step by step to help them become who they want to be. And I think if there is an excellent place to be able to see the practice of this kind of leadership is in teachers teaching. There's so many teachers, and especially veteran teachers, who are remembered with a lot of nostalgia by their students. Students remember specific experiences that these teachers took them through. And it's the same. We also remember the teachers who were slave drivers and who really gave us a hard time. But when you find a teacher that has really learned to stand in their truth and they are okay with understanding that you are a student and they are not there to push you to pass exams, but they are there to mold you, then those actually they tend to end up becoming the people that we remember the most. And that's what this is about. If we're looking to create legacies, and not just legacies for the sake of legacy, but legacies because we want to leave people whole, because we want to leave our nation whole. It's in our organizations, it's in our families. The people that then transition into leadership at higher levels come from these social setups. And if our organizations then become the toxic places where people cannot thrive, and we are actually strangling creativity and we're strangling expression, then we cripple and we create major handicaps into what can actually become a huge possibility to make this continent what it can actually be. In getting to this depth of empathy, what we can do is that we can communicate powerfully. We can communicate with intention. We can communicate with understanding, and we can be able to do what is necessary to get ahead with our vision. And so vision fulfillment becomes very, very important, but vision fulfillment also becomes a place where we can bring others along with us and we don't stand back at the glory. So what am I saying as I actually come to an end? What I'm saying is, what's next ultimately, now that we have said this, I'll leave us with three things. Use this period. We're going into sort of like a low period, and I know there's some of us that have exams, but we have at least a week or two before the year comes to a close, where we will sort of be a little laid back than we probably even have been as we take time to celebrate Christmas and the different holidays associated with this period. Use this holiday period to reflect on how you can access empathy for yourself and for the people that you're leading. That's one of our key takeouts. Number two, and I think this is where this will distinguish who will succeed and who will not. Please be ready for the discomfort that engaging with your feelings introduces into your practice and into your mantle as a leader. This is an uncomfortable space. I think that I think is what we need to get. We have looked at empathy as something that is so, oh, wow, it's beautiful, it's brilliant, it's soft. We can bring it into the workplace. But empathy, really, when you're practicing empathy, it is very, very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to keep listening to people do not respond to them, but to understand them. It's difficult to continually be able to sit down and decode the body language of different people, because it means that you have to invest in understanding their context, you have to invest in understanding their backgrounds, you have to invest in understanding them. And remember, Mr. Ndega's remarks at the beginning, people want to know. Ultimately, I say this in communication, even though you are the best speaker, imagine the only thing that people want to know about you is that, do you care? Do you care about us? Be ready for the discomfort that this reflection will introduce, because if you're doing it right, it'll definitely introduce a lot of discomfort. I want to recommend a reading in this case if it gets too uncomfortable. And I found that there is a book. It's by Dr. Caroline Leaf, one of the foremost thinkers when it comes to feelings and when it comes to processing them. And it's called Switch on Your Brain. If you can get a handle on that book as a leader, as an aspiring leader, that book is a game changer when it comes to being able to understand how to lead when we are also human. It's called Switch on Your Brain, Caroline Leaf, and you'll be able to get it anywhere where books are sold. And then the third thing that I'll say is suspend judgment. In the reflecting, for now, just suspend judgment. Why? So that you can distinguish between the management of the relationships that matter to you and the management of the tasks that are associated with fulfilling your vision. So I'm speaking to the leader in this. And every one of us has a place and a space where they are leading. It is a large organization, it could be an entity, it's a group of people, it's managing a neighborhood, it could be managing a social setup, it could be managing ourselves, and that's the most important thing, the leadership that we extend to ourselves. Suspend judgment, at least for now, so that you can distinguish between managing relationships, managing the tasks that are associated with fulfilling this vision. And having said that, those three things, use the holiday season to reflect, be ready for the discomfort that this introduces, and suspend judgment so that you're able to distinguish between these two hats that you find yourself wearing. You're the one who is bringing the fulfillment of the vision, but yet you have to manage the relationships that I think is what, for me, constitutes building back better. And I think it's introducing to us the place where we now begin to be reflective, sit down and reflect a lot more than we probably would if we are in the place of being mainstream, or if we didn't have this kind of disruption. Disruptions are excellent because disruptions help us to start again. And I think this is as good a time as any other to build back better and to use these reforms. And with those remarks and with that share about leadership, communication, and empathy, I want to, I think, hand it back to Tom, because he's our moderator, because I know that there might be a session where we have Q&A, but I think this is where I come to the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening and for inviting me as well.
Thank you very much, Wangui. I think that was a wonderful presentation. You've actually shared with us great insights into empathetic leadership, because that is all that we really want to do, particularly now that we are dealing with this pandemic and there's more to listening than just pushing people to achieve the vision. So we really thank you for that, and we really like the insights that you've shared with us, and of course you've given us the 3 assignments, homework. I know what next, and I hope that the audience, the members, will be able to fulfill those areas and be able just to do self-reflection in terms of how we move forward as empathetic leaders. So thank you. Just like as you grab a glass of water, I know members have actually shared some questions with us, and we are happy that even today we have members connected from Mombasa, Naivasha, Kisumu, Kisii, and they're actually on this webinar with us. But just sampling some few questions that came through. Let me start with the question that has come from Sultan Amri. Can empathy sometimes be perceived by followers, as a sign of weakness? Of course, which is tying up with the other question that we got earlier, that can empathetic leadership lead to lack of respect? What in Kiswahili they call it kuzoeana. So note that, Wangui. Then the second question that we have, which came through earlier from our members, how is empathetic leadership different from progressive leadership? How is empathetic leadership different from progressive leadership? That is a second question, but of course, question number one is tied to what Sultan Amri asked, and that is in the chat. Of course, we encourage you members to use the chat to actually ask your questions and be able to address them. If not now, but of course also we can share the answers later. Then the last question, of course, we'll be taking the first three sets, first three questions in a set, and then if time allows, we ask the other three. The last one for this set is, does leadership style affect the organizational culture, hence impeding the close relationships? So, Angui, would you want to address those first three questions?
Thank you, Tom. These are wonderful questions. They're challenging in a sense, and I'd like to address them just the way you have asked them. So someone asked, empathetic leadership, or when you express empathy, will people zoea you, or will it become a place of softness? And I think this is traditionally what we have always thought or felt, that when we are in the place of being empathetic, if we show people too much understanding, watatuzoea, or they will get too used to us. But the thing is, the people that we work with are human beings. The case for saying that you'll become soft, or watakuzoea, it comes from that place where we have come from, the thinking that our workplaces do not have feelings in them. And I think as the leader, what this looks like is being able to cast a vision where people are okay with being human. The reason why people will take advantage is there are varied reasons. Some people are lazy. Some people have, and that laziness also has a background to it. Some people have come from a difficult background. Some people are afraid of being victimized at work. What empathy does is that in one fell swoop, you're able to doing it actively, you are actually able to weed out the toxicity that even gets people taking advantage. When we are practicing empathy, we are giving people the opportunity to be their very best, even though they are human beings. So it is not an overnight thing. It takes a while. Like I'm saying, we need to reflect on how we can begin to build it back better. It won't happen overnight. And by the way, even when you find that you're being empathetic and you're understanding where people are coming from and they're taking advantage, it also is information. It's telling you that you may have people that are in the wrong fit for the kind of work that needs to be done. In a proper context, when people feel that they are understood, it motivates them to do better and to be better. But again, remember that we've also been socialized where we were told that when even in school, you are not, if you praise people too much, they will become too comfy. But it's not about praise and it's not about manipulation. It's about understanding the place where people are at so that you can help them begin to become productive and do better. And so I think, yes, there is that place where a leader feeling and looking like a human being may initially look like they are being soft, but ultimately your vision is to be able to get everybody to the place where they are feeling understood and they are understanding others to be able to cast a vision. It's, if you look at it from the middle term benefit and the long term benefit, then you will be able to counter that, because that has traditionally always been how we've looked at it, that if the boss is good at work, then we can take advantage, but that's not it. An empathetic boss is a boss that understands where you're coming from and mitigating so that you can still be able to cast a vision and not to give away elements of laziness. So someone asked the difference between progressive leadership and empathetic leadership. And so, progressive leadership is the ability for leaders to actually look outside of the immediate workspace, or to take into account the different contexts that can make the workplace work better. Or not just the workplace, it could be a group of people, it could be an institution, it could be the nation, it could be a continent, it could be a body. Looking outside of that, which means that you're looking at the different collaborations to help make it better, is what progressive leadership is. I think empathy works, or empathy, when you introduce empathy into this kind of relationship, it works to help you now even become much more progressive, because it's introducing something that is completely countercultural into the workplace. It is the place where we have traditionally been punished people that are not being productive, for instance, without understanding why they're not being productive. But if you can be able to understand why people are not being productive, maybe they just need better training. Maybe they have something of a personal nature that needs addressing or needs understanding. When you are doing that in both ways, then you closely link these two together. So while progressive leadership is looking at the context of that, of a greater, sort of like introducing a bigger worldview into the workplace so that people are able to work better, empathy is allowing the humanity of the people that work with us to step into the workplace, but not impede our fulfilling of the vision that we're doing. I hope that works. So they're closely related, but they are distinct in their different ways. You can be a progressive leader without having empathy, but you cannot be an empathetic leader without being progressive, because ultimately, empathizing with people will bring progress in a different area, because people will flourish. And then someone asked about leadership styles. Of course, absolutely, of course. The leadership style has everything to do, it does even impact on how empathy is practiced. Some leaders will find empathy being easier to implement than other leaders. If we look at the different, like if we were to talk about the Myers and Briggs sort of personality testing, the 16 different types, you will see that each of those types, if they're in leadership, then the work environment will be a completely different place. Now, what is the game changer in styles of leadership? Self-awareness. If I can put it in Swahili, tukijielewa as the leadership. If we understand and if we are aware of how we make people feel as leaders, it will bring us to a closer place to become empathetic leaders. That being able to understand how you make people feel, how you yourself are feeling, and how that impacting on the people around you, that level is what helps us then begin to understand what we can do. For some people, it's that when you come in, there's your presence excites people or inspires people to work. You can use that to build people and express understanding. For some people, your presence, through no fault of your own, your presence can actually intimidate people. So what do? You begin to find a workaround around it. So for different leaders, depending on your style, type, personality type, and temperament, you will have different challenges as you implement this. But it comes from one place. The self-awareness element, which is critical in emotional intelligence, becomes a critical tool to help us now begin to express our own humanity and allow other people to express that humanity. I hope that answers the three questions.
Yes, Wangui, that does. Thank you very much. Well articulated. And of course, your answers have also addressed the other questions that we had, including where do you draw the line between empathy and non-delivery. And I think that also you have answered very, very well. Thank you for that. And by and large, this is a great presentation that we've had, because it actually challenges us that we really need to see where we need to improve as leaders so that we become empathetic. And of course, as you are answering, I know Bitonga Katurima asked a question on that, and I want to believe, Bitonga, your question has been answered. Patrick Muraguri is asking that please just the name of the book that you suggested, So Wangui, maybe during Mr. Ndego's closing remarks, maybe you could just put it in the chat there so that members can be able to get it correctly so that they can pick the same. Of course, we encourage you all members to interact with our chats. We have our products there. We are talking about the new normal. Remember, we are talking about having conversation with ourselves. We have online programs, so if you interact with the chat box, you'll be able to find programs where you can log in and get to interact further with current products. So we encourage you to do the same so that you continue connecting with your institute, because we are here to serve you as our distinguished members. So thank you so much, Wangui. I think that was a great presentation, and we'll be able to look for opportunities where we can engage you further and see what other programs that we can do together. Without further ado, of course, we want to come to an end of this webinar. Next week, we request you to keep tuned, please. Next week's topic will be shaping your professional journey for success. We'll be able to share the details with you through our normal channels. You'll get the communication before then. So please connect with us next week for that very interesting conversation, just like what we have had today. I therefore want to hand over to Mr. Ndego, please, the KM Executive CEO, for his closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. I think members will agree with me that Wangui has given an excellent discourse on this topic. And for those of us who are members of the Institute, you will be sent the presentation because it was being recorded. But if you are not a member, we request you to please pay for your membership. And the easiest way is just to go to the website. Details are on the chart, because once you join and you become a member, then you will not get this presentation of today, but even the previous ones that were there before. So all upon us, let's make sure that we of appreciation. But before we do that, we want to encourage that those of us who are not members, please pay up your membership. And once you have paid up your membership, we will endeavor to send to you this presentation which was being recorded and even previous ones. And you will stand to enjoy a lot of these benefits of the webinars that we run on a weekly basis. Without further ado, allow me just to give a vote of thanks to a number of people. One of them is specifically those who have been with us in these webinars. And we want to appreciate those who joined us today for the very first time. I think looking through the scroll, we could see there are a number of new faces. And these are people who logged in for the first time today. To all of you, we want to say thank you very much. Please remember that we have these webinars coming every Thursday, 3 to 5 p.m. There are also those who've been with us since inception, since we started these webinars way back in April. To all of you again, thank you so very much. And there are those also who logged in very early. I think at the beginning, just about 2:45 or 2:50, I think I counted about 37. And to all of you who logged in early, thank you so much, because we always start these webinars exactly at 3 p.m. so that we're able to finish in good time. Allow me to appreciate all those who raised questions, whether they had posted the questions in advance or whether they posted the questions on the chat, because you always say that great presentation that doesn't have any questions, one then is left to wonder, is it that people didn't understand or is it the topic? So the topic was too hard, and I'm sure Wangui must have appreciated that there were many questions that were posted both on the chat and even questions that had been sent much earlier. We always appreciate, and we don't take it for granted, the support we do get also from our governing council. And I think looking through the scroll, I saw one of our council members. This is Professor Atemo Micheka, who is the chair of the Membership Development Committee. Prof, thank you very much for logging in. And I also saw our Vice Chancellor for the Management University of Africa, Dr. Washington Okeo. Again, also thank you for coming in and logging in to support the mother or the father of Management University of Africa. And to the KIM staff, Tom and your team, thank you so much. You guys, you work so hard, religiously delivering these webinars every Thursday, 3 to 5. We don't take that for granted. And so to all of you, Tom and your entire team, thank you so very much. Last but not least is Wangui Kili. She's done an excellent job And reading through the comments on the chat, Wangoi, I've seen so many comments that what you presented was insightful, it was excellent, very well articulated. All these are adjectives that clearly describe the fact that people have connected very well with you. And the topic, though a little difficult, though a little heavy, and I think there was, as you rightly said, there was a bit of heavy lifting, but you made it so easy that we're all able to understand and follow through. So to you, we say thank you so much for the excellent discourse. As Tom said, we are likely to call you again, maybe for another discourse on a similar topic or a related topic, but thank you so very much. And I think people, if you'll agree with me, the usual way is to give her the thumbs up or to give her the ululation, just as a token of appreciation through the air that Wangoi, you've done an excellent job. Thank you so much. And to all of you, we wish you a blessed evening. Please continue to take care of yourselves and your loved ones as guided by the Ministry of Health protocols, and stay safe and be blessed and have a blessed evening. Thank you all so very much. We look forward to see you again, same time on Thursday next week. Bye and God bless you for now.